answer that for you. But first, I want you to find the chat box and tell me who's heard of or used a business canvas model. Please go ahead. Go find that chat box.
You'll find the chat box on the bottom right.
Hello, everyone. Not formally used. Had to Google it. Ali knows all about that. Ooh, Arjun, you've used it. Okay. Okay, bring it on. Steve Pierce. Heard and used it. Sarah Singh, I'm going to put you on the spot. Good. No idea. Heard of it, but haven't used it. Awesome. Okay, let's get ripping here. So, at the Design Lab, as you know, we behave a little bit entrepreneurial, or we try to. We try to think about how to add value in a more business mindset. So we use Scrum, which is agile. We're trying to work faster and quicker. And so we quickly stumbled upon the Business Canvas model, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. But I wanted to start off by saying, a lot of people say, well, we're government. What does that have to do with business? Or people might not be that bold, but they might say, well, or they think it. But I love this quote by Christina Costello, that it's organizations are not entrepreneurial, but people are. And so even inside a bureaucracy the size of ours, we can be entrepreneurial, and we can behave that way and make the same impact. So for today, we're hoping that you'll get out of this webinar, play a bit with the canvas, find out why you would use it. The reason we love the business canvas model, because it helps you find out your core value that you contribute to the organization or patients. It gives you a new perspective, some fresh ideas, but it can also get your team on the same page. So we've had many people come to us and saying, you know, we're having trouble getting traction. And then we use the business canvas model to discuss, well, you know, who is your customer and what is your value? So it's an excellent tool to sort of focus your team. So if you're part of a team that's a bit lost in the weeds or lost somewhere, this might be something you can think about. I mean, Ali, why do you think the business canvas model is such a big deal?
You know, based just on our Design Lab experience, I think teams really feel sometimes that they're busy, but they're not making a difference. And they're busy doing all these other stuff or things that, you know, it's not making traction, like you said. And so the business model canvas is really getting back to like, why are we here? What's our purpose? And are we actually delivering and meeting the needs of our customers? And this is the real challenge that we have. And sometimes people forget about it. And if we don't have these conversations on an ongoing basis, it can really become difficult. And the business model canvas, even though it says business model, and a lot of people think it's only for a new business kind of thing, it's really could be used anytime throughout your team's kind of in a year. And it's a living document, which you guys can continue to come back to and think about.
All right, I want to see a chat from you, or you can speak up. What are you curious about today? Why did you come? Go away. Oh, go ahead. Go away. Steve, why did you come? Unmute your phone. Tell us.
I have no idea, other than Ali invited me, and I respect that if Ali tells me about something, I probably need to know about it.
Oh. I'm curious about someone else. Sarah, Kevin, why are you here? What are you curious about?
I'm really curious about how we use this in government.
Oh.
And start to think of our programs and divisions as small businesses. I think it's a really good idea.
Okay, great. You can be our champion. All right, I see the texts are rolling in. Currently undertaking strategic planning and might contribute to our efforts. Oh, Greg, do you want to speak up? Do you know where your mute button is? Greg McIntyre.
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
Yep, yes. You're on.
Hey, so no, it's, you know, I think even just what you said so far, connecting to the value, getting lost in the weeds, I think that's a big deal. And the strategic planning we're doing is more at a leadership level, and I think this could potentially have us interface with, you know, the team.
Right, right. Excellent. Well, why don't we get started and we'll give you a little bit more information before we engage you again. So we stole this slide from Startup Calgary. I took a 3-hour workshop with Startup Calgary. It was $20. I'm sure most big cities have this service. And I love this slide because on the left, we see that the business model is a simple diagram of your business versus, back in the day, do you remember, I don't know if any of you've ever wanted to start a business. I certainly thought about it. And people said, well, you need a solid business plan. That's what everyone used to say. And then you'd be like, what, a solid business plan? Oh, well, that's never going to happen. Like, who has time for that? And then it just felt like a mountain to climb that you would actually never tackle. So the
Mhm.
business model canvas, I love the simplicity of it, but also the utility. And of course, I'm not joking when I said it's a document that leadership will make you write that no one will read. I've written so many things that no one has read that were strategic documents. So we're making a little bit of fun of our current practices, but I do think I love the simplicity of the model, and that's why we wanted to share it with you. So this is what a business model canvas looks like. At the end of the slide pack, we'll send these to you. You will see links so you can download them. There's,
We've
slight.
already sent them at PDF. Those who got
Oh,
the list, the
oh,
invite, they should have a PDF in
okay,
there.
perfect, perfect. So you can see here how simple it is. So we get these printed up in a large size, like we don't go by an 8x11. And you can see the quadrants that are positioned. And we're going to walk through some of the important pieces of this canvas model with you. But I wanted to show you the overall arching picture first. We've taken this from Strategizer. If you want to find out a cool website, Ali, maybe you can hop it into the chat box. But Strategizer is by far like one of my favorite places to go, after Gaping Void, of course. All right. So what? Ali Google found this on the internet. What do people see the value for a business canvas model? And so when people were asked, they said it creates a better conversation on strategy. So even though you're doing a strategic document, Greg, that doesn't mean you can't do this. Like, I'm running a retreat with an organization in April, and I'm going to start talking about the business canvas model first before I jump into 135 year planning. It creates a shared language. Better ideas are put on the table, better brainstorming. It focuses you. It contributes to teamwork, some practical outcomes. Um, it doesn't say this here, but it does expose some elephants in the room. Like, some people will say something and they think this is a piece of the value proposition, but other people don't agree with it. So it often creates a bit of a tool to debate and to converse about, why do you exist? Why does your team exist? And what service are you offering? This is our business canvas model for the design lab. So this is up in our lab at the Mount Royal University. And so we use sticky notes. You can also just write on it, but ideally you revisit this every quarter. So it's not something you do once and that's it, but you actually can use it as a tool to converse with your team to see if you need to change your focus and change your service. I will talk a little bit more about the details of what I've written on here because you can't see it. But we're going to have you do some of this exercise with us. I'm now going to pass it to Ali.
All right. So we're gonna, in this webinar, we won't be going through every little section, but me and Marley said, what is the most important ones we want you to focus on that will create the most conversation, and it's probably the biggest value add from business model canvas. And the number one is really your customer segment. And a lot of times people get confused by customer. This is a business language, but really, who is your target client and whose need are you filling? So next slide, please. And we are looking for to think about your targets, your customer or your target client. You just don't think of an average, I'm looking at, this kind of patient. And you're really trying to get very specific in defining what kind of clients are you going to be serving, who's actually going to whose life are you going to change and make a difference in. Next slide, please. So I want to use a more specific example of how a company has done it. So I'm not sure how many of you heard of Lyft. Lyft is another alternative like Uber. It's a ride-sharing app. It's been really successful in the States. And from their business model canvas, they define their customer very specifically, and you can see the characteristics that are defining a customer, not demographic profiles, but actually more around what kind of customers are they trying to serve. So from their perspective, it was someone who doesn't own a car, someone who doesn't want to drive themselves, someone who wants to socialize and have a friend while traveling. So those are very specific ways of defining your customers. So what we want you to do now is either open up your lines or type in the chat box. Think about your own team that you work in, your business unit. Who is your target audience? And try to be very specific. And you can type it in or shout it out. We would love to hear from you.
And I've typed in a couple things that my team is thinking about. Okay, Keith, surgical residents. Okay. Very specific. Good.
Member physicians were interested in engaging quality improvement work.
So, Tass, would you be able to be more specific? People who want to improve the system? People who want to see change? Do you want to unmute? Meredith, teams that have access issues they need solved. Can you be more specific? You can speak up if you want. So, Art, how would you, Ali, how would you counsel what you're seeing here?
So I'll tell you what ones I really like, though. I like the one that Steve mentioned, saying business leaders who are struggling to meet objectives.
Yeah.
And we can get more specific, Steve. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, when I find my mute button. Yeah, the little improvement team I work with, we're attached to all the corporate services portfolios, and our value proposition for those people is if they've got problems that they haven't figured out how to solve, problems without solutions.
Right. Good. And that's the kind of the piece where, for example, one we use in our team is, people like a manager, or we're getting very specific, a leader who just doesn't know how to execute or solve a problem and needs support. Right. One example that I'm struggling to understand is, Keith, you said surgical residents, and for me it's two-way. So can you tell me more, like?
Waiting for my, there
you go, Keith.
now. So we are a surgical education and simulation center, and so our clients, or the way we look at clients, are our learners, and so that is one of our learner cohorts. They tend to be general surgery or surgical foundations.
Right. And is there certain characteristics within that surgical resident profile that you're looking for, who are wanting to come to you guys? Why would they want to come to you?
Because they have to.
Well,
so they're not really customers. They're prisoners. I don't know. No, not prisoners, but we're responsible for providing the surgical simulations aligned to the Royal College's criteria on milestones and entrustable professional activities. So we run surgical simulations for them, and then we help to provide evaluation.
So the way I look at it is surgical residents who are looking for applied simulation learning, right? For me, that's the way, like getting more specific to what is their need that they're trying to fill. Okay,
so when you list a group like that, it's basically a verb and an adjective.
In a way, yeah, but because the thing is, one thing that we don't want to say is, leaders, or just this broad term, because one of the things that we need to be very specific is the customers are getting more and more distinct and defined. And the better you can define your customer, the better you can have a conversation about what are you going to value add their life. and this will be in the second part in a few minutes, I'll go to that, but having a very understanding of your customer, and it may not be only one customer. You may have 3-4 kind of types of people you're serving, but at least you have a good idea of who's in that mix.
So if I can jump in for a sec, Ali,
Sure.
is it fair to say it's easier to start with your customer segment because you guys rattled them off? You're probably thinking right now, wow, whoopee crap, I knew this. But it's easier to start there because we often know who we're working with before you now go to the next. So we're actually approaching this model the way that we recommend you do it when you go back to your teams.
Yes. Okay. Let me just try one more thing. Teams who need project management support. Yeah, that's I can live with that. What about you?
Marlies?
Yeah.
No, I like that. I thought people were pretty good, being quite specific. I really like it when people say, like, this Lyft example, people who don't want to drive themselves, like very, like to the core, frontline managers who have zero time to work on QI, or leaders who it's just so very specific. Because if you look at these Lyft examples, for me, I'm not sure I would have thought of these as their customer segments. I thought they would have said people, people who need rides, right?
Right.
This is actually way more specific, which I like, because it narrows down and gets a common language for my team that, this is a segment within that customer population.
Right.
So, Marlies and Ali, can I ask a question?
Yes.
And this is, I think, one of those places, one of the other participants, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name, mentioned earlier, how do we apply this in a government environment?
Right.
And working in healthcare as well. And it comes back to that comment around we're working with prisoners. We're the ones that they have to go to their surgery to get their required surgical simulations. And so this is really structured as people who want to, and there's a degree to which they're pulling customers. And some of the programs that will be represented on this call, based on what we're seeing, really do still have that pull component. We want to get managers looking at QI, even if they don't have time. But others of us are a bit more push or necessary engagement. Like, I mean, there's no choice.
Yeah. So I'll jump in before Ali does, but my thought is that's one of our biggest problems. Like, in healthcare, we haven't really designed services around patients. We've designed them out around professionals for the same reason. We don't have to because, there's no other game in town and it's socialized medicine. However, if you want to do an amazing job and like be the most interesting sim unit on the face of the planet and be talked about and sought after and become a national leader, there would be motivation to be to meet, even though your customer's forced, the prisoner, to give them an amazing experience. So I don't know, I would almost park it. But Ali, what's your take on it? I have no idea.
Marlies, could you jump to 2 slides ahead? I want to kind of show a slide that might help put this into perspective. Just another, keep going.
This one?
The next one.
Oh, you love this.
Yeah, so this one, this is for me is pretty much the most important piece, that even if you have customers that they must come to you, it is very critical that you understand them, understanding what are you trying to help, what is your team or your service trying to do, and how are you gonna make their life easier, right? And that's the whole thing about, are you doing busy work or are you really making a difference in the lives of your customers, right? Your people who just have to come. And it's like, for me, the example is, I can go to my one family doctor I was with, he would make me wait an hour to see him. And this other family doctor literally gets me in right away. Right? So for me, is like the person understands that that there is a better way of making my life easier, but he understands my pains and gains. And that's the way we want to look at your customers. Each of your customer profiles that you create, ultimately they're looking is every customer has a pain and gain, and they're trying to get something accomplished. And that's where your service or product or team that's delivering a service, you're trying to meet that piece through either enhancing.
That's interesting. So can I jump then?
Yeah.
Like, I remember I used to work with operating rooms, and they had the surgical safety checklist, which we all know, but they thought the checklist didn't make the operating room safer, even though lots of people thought that that was the right way to go. So we worked with them to figure out, well, get the list done, like do the bare minimum, but then how would you make this operating room safer, and what conversations and what kind of relationships would you like to see happen so that you feel that this place is safer, not because of some checklist that someone's asking you to do. So then we're still taking care of business, but we're also meeting their pains.
Yeah. I just want to open up for any questions on this. I know this is a little bit of a challenging concept for some people, so I wanted to, because in healthcare we don't think like this.
I wonder, should we just go to value proposition and you'll come back to this?
Sure. So yes, there you go. So the second most important part, after you've looked at your understanding who your target audience is, the next part, and this is the focal point of the whole business model canvas, is your value proposition. Majority of when you do this business model canvas with your teams, you will be spending 80% of your time on the value proposition, because that's where the debate happens. That's where, your team might say, well, this is our value, and people will say, this is our value. So next slide, please. Ultimately, how we define value in the business end is like, are you solving a problem or are you meeting someone's need? How are you making someone's life easier or fulfilling their need? There's a famous line inventors use: find a need and fill a need. So that's what we're trying to do with the value proposition within in your service, is what is need are you fulfilling? And this, next slide, please. So back to this slide again, just so that you understand it, the value proposition is ultimately saying is that the service that I'm providing, the value it gives is that it either meets the need of the customer, it enhances their pleasure, or reduces their pain. Next slide, please. And we'll go into a good example of that, again, how Lyft does it, back to our Lyft example. If you can see that Lyft is pretty specific of what value are they creating. So customers hate waiting, so they said minimum waiting time. Customers these days don't have cash, so they said, okay, our value is that we can have cashless ride. Customers want cheaper ride, so they're like, yep, our price will be lower than taxi fares. And another one, customer-centric one, is that you will be able to track your time and know exactly when the ride is coming and where it is going to be. So they're very specific and very tangible in how their service, the value proposition, is meeting specific needs of the customers that they had talked about. Now, if you see below, the blue ones, they've also added of values they're creating for, in the Lyft example, the drivers who are going to be literally part of their workforce. How are they creating value for them? So they're saying someone who is going to be wants to have an additional source of income, we're going to make them, that's another value for them. We're going to give flexible working schedule, because that's what people want. Easy payments, and they're not treated like taxi drivers. So they had two kind of values: one very customer-centric value proposition, and also a people-centric value proposition. So it's like we did last time. Why don't you guys take a stab at what do you think your team's value proposition is? What do you guys think? And be specific, just like this Lyft example.
I'm ripping them off. Well, I've done it already. I really love how simple this is, and I think that's what we're not used to in healthcare, is these like 3 words: minimum wait time, cashless ride, like boom, right for the money, right? So try to emulate that. Yeah. Easier communication. Good. Done today. So tasks instead of support for practice change. I'm wondering, is it value proposition, improve care at that unit, or improve clinical care? I know you can't speak because it's loud there. We'll just let them roll in, sorry. Address in-house gaps with project management expertise and FTE. Okay, so Richard, what could be a simpler way of saying that? Value proposition, save people time, make life easier with projects. I don't know. Ali, am I off my rocker here?
No, I'm trying to find Richard's one. And okay, FTE, address in-house gaps. So Richard, I would ask is ultimately with your customer that you're thinking about, the person you're trying to serve, those project management expertise is doing what? What is it called? What's the means? What's the end game?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's I guess achieving their project goals.
And what kind of goals were those? Like, what are they? For example, just give me an idea.
Well, it could vary whether we're supporting a sort of a clinical area or a corporate area. But I mean, ultimately, you want your I guess they're delivering business to their clients, and we're trying to help them do that, sort of on schedule, in scope, on time, like within budget, things like that.
So yeah. So I would say yeah. So save people time and execute project faster, right? And for that would be kind of the value proposition in your department, and being very specific, like what's the end game for them.
Execute projects faster is interesting to me because Richard, if you guys all agree that that's a value, you could have a project manager who takes 4 times longer than the next project manager, right? So, but if you've said as a team, we actually are here to execute projects faster, then there's a different mindset in the team about, okay, oh my God, we're about faster. We're not just about project management. I don't know, does that help? Do you have some slow project managers in your team?
No, it does help. Yeah, I mean, I think about, I mean, even faster as much as just even being able to do it on time, right, for a plan. But I think that makes sense to me as well.
Yeah, it comes down to is like, so there might be other teams that might be also project management. So I'll give you a perfect example. So a lot of people question design lab saying, well, what do you guys really do? Where do you work in? Like, because we have QI teams and process improvement teams. Where do you guys fit? And so our niche is we really focus on the community and the complex problems that usually are more outside in the realm. So mental health projects or really social innovation kind of projects. And so that's our kind of place where we fit in. So our value proposition really is helping solve complex problems, right? The ones that might be more, there's no specific process improvement, but it's more like larger and complex. And the benefit of this is that when you have the value proposition conversation here, your team can just question each other, like, are we actually doing that? Is that all we think we should be doing that? And sometimes you might question, like, well, we've never had a conversation with a customer saying, like, what are they actually wanting from us? Because we just get projects and something we do consult. But what kind of clients what's the trend of our clients we're seeing? Are more and more saying that we want someone to just really do it fast or make it simple. Or a lot of them are asking for something like some sort of documentation that we really do good at. And it's that back and forth conversation between what is your kind of person or your client you're serving and what value are you creating for them. And this means your group is evolving and reflecting over your actual core value that you're providing for people, and helps you define, like, what is my actual role.
Thank you, Kevin.
Let's pick on someone else. Shauna, good change experience. Tell me more about that.
Her mic might not work. What would you suggest?
For me, I'm still not sure if your clients, who your client is, but I'm assuming there is a change management. But are they looking for a good change experience? Is that you're talking about more of a process? But what's the end goal? What is a client wanting to get done through you?
Not die and do a change project. Sean, I'm speaking for you. What do you think? Have fun while changing?
Is it working now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So our client is basically any groups that are going through change, and it's supporting them to be successful in how they roll out change within their areas. And so we know that sort of the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and so we're trying to change that so that people can experience better changes where they're included, where they're thought of in the change process. And the way that we do that is supporting the people that are running the changes. So, partnering with people like the folks on Richard's team, so that there's the project management side, but then there's also the change management side, and integrating the two together.
So a better experience than normal, potentially. Like, I'm just thinking of Lyft, price lower than a normal taxi fare. How are you different from your next competitor, the next project management group? Because God knows we have a lot of them.
Right. And so you can use specific, get more specific, because I would say is, making change simpler, easier, right? Because
I think it's a history piece, though. Like, we want folks to have a good experience. I think that's the most important piece, because as things are always going to be coming down, and we don't want people to think, and to sort of have their back up against a wall before it's even really announced. If you've had a positive experience, then you're like, oh, there's a new change, but I know I've been considered, I know I've been part of it, I know.
So your value proposition is it's fun to change. Yeah, you're offering that service. It's funner to work with you than it is to work with the design lab. As one piece, but also it is successful. It's more engaging. It's more collaborative.
Yeah, I think it's more because change isn't always fun for people, especially.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I would say fun, but I would say it's more engaging. It's easier.
Okay.
It's more inclusive.
Yeah. So this, from your point of view, what I like about this conversation is that when you're talking about your change, then you're already thinking about the client wants to come back to you again.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's a pull thing is like, so we have to be different. So you literally ask your question, what are we going to do differently? Which is one of the reason why the business model canvas is so good, is that how do we be different, think differently to make sure that this client loves us and wants to work with us again. And that is the money there, right? Ultimately, like, if we want to evolve and be different and be better at being what we call is client-centered or patient-centered, or, then we have to, this business model kind of helps us have those conversations.
Oh, I see Tanya on the line. Hello, darling. Do you know where your mute button is? Hi.
Yeah, hi.
So you guys have done a lot of work on trying to be, a value add to the organization. What would you be one of your value propositions that you're thinking about?
I'm just trying to find the right words for it. But I think one of them is, I'm kind of going back to our behaviors and kind of figuring out how those words could used. But helping people, understanding how to share information.
Or so value, what is okay and what is not okay.
What's okay and what's not, or how to share properly, when to keep quiet. Like,
I love it. When to shut up. Yeah, when to quiet. So Tanya's with the privacy department.
Oh yes.
Interesting.
When it's okay when it's okay to share, because there are times it's okay to share, and I think that's one thing we're really focusing on, is helping people understand that.
Yeah.
Right.
Love the simplicity of that.
Thanks.
Any questions on this? Because I want to spend more time on this a little bit just to give people opportunity to ask questions, clarify.
Yeah, I've got 12:38. We got to get rocking here pretty soon, Ali. Do we want to put anyone else on the spot? Sarah Singh, you've gotten away with nothing. I'm not even you. She's like, I can't even find me a mute button. What are you thinking so far?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. And this is something that we're actually going through right now, just trying to figure out our value proposition for integration and innovation in primary healthcare. So
yeah,
I actually think it's a really good exercise, and I don't think without doing this, I don't know if we can actually provide value in our services. So thinking about our users and thinking about why we exist. So I don't have an answer, but I definitely, we're going through this process, and I think there's a lot of value to it.
All right. Ali, is it okay to move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, we couldn't help but put in the Simon Sinek Golden Circle. I know many of you have seen it. My cubicle mate here is in love with Simon Sinek. It's her online boyfriend. He is beautiful, but check out this short video. And this is really hard to do. Like, you know, even Ali confronted me the other day and he goes, okay, Marlise, why do we exist? And I'm like, yeah, complex problems, like blah, 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 right? So it's really interesting to try to practice it. Like, why do you exist? It's so easy to talk about, oh, we provide change management support. We do project management. We do simulation for surgical residents. But it's not getting to the why. So spending some time with your team on the why, I think, is totally worth it for everybody. Anything to add, Ali?
No. And it just, the only thing I would just say is, you know, this is like the why, how, what, this golden circle is probably the most simplified version of the business model canvas. Right? It's a very simplified version, but this discussion should always be happening, you know, regularly in your team. So make sure that you guys are still on track. Better than the strategic planning sessions, I would say.
Ooh, dig. We wanted to let you know, this actually kind of concludes our short presentation, but we wanted you to know that we are helping groups go through the business canvas model. If you want an outsider there that can ask some tough questions, it is a service we're offering. So if you're interested, of course, we want to hear if you're going to be using the business canvas model, what your experience was, how did you approach it, where did you get bogged down, and how did it go over with your team. But I also want to hear from you in the chat box. Is this something that you can see yourself using, either partially or the entirety of it? Did we pique your interest? So just please type into the text box or unmute your lines and let us know.
Say yes, no, maybe.
Yeah. And while you do that, we also did pull together a couple of the links. Startup Calgary, I stole, you know, shamelessly from them. You can, you know, read more about it. Love the concept. Thank you. Yeah, interested. Awesome. And I think back to your team. Is there a bit of a disconnect amongst your team about why you exist? Do people have different ideas about what you should be working on? Do you get frustrated when you see people working on things that you don't think add value, and maybe they feel the same about you? Or are you a leader who's like feeling that your team is just all over the place and not really making a mark? So I think that's when the business canvas model is a nice way to kind of focus people. Any last questions? Ali, any thoughts before we sign off?
Yes. I wanted to offer something we did it a couple of weeks ago. We are doing Vice Crowds, which is if you have any challenge or are stuck in a problem and just want to consult with us, our team kind of comes in. We do a 30-minute chat with you. You tell us about your problem. We discuss it. We brainstorm a few things, and we give you our take on it. It's fun. It's fast. And it's a great way of allowing someone else to look at your problem from a different perspective. And if you like our recommendations and something that we both want to work together on, we're happy to do it. So we're offering those. So reach out to us, me or Marlies, or just at the design.lab@ahs.ca, and we'd be happy to help you guys too.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Go have some more lunch. And as we promised, we never go for the full hour. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.